Alright, hey guys, welcome back to an interesting video on Wild Rift. Today we're back with a tier list for Fetch 5.2. We haven't done a tier list since I think quite some time ago. I honestly have no idea when, but anyways, since the last tier list, of course, since patch 5.2 released, there have been a couple of changes. We have, of course, the addition of Eclipse, the Psychic Projector, and Divine Sunderer. Of the three, really, the only one that matters is Divine Sunderer. And also, of course, we have the addition of the two new heralds, the Gorilla Turret, the Mimic, as well as the T-Hex. Of those, mainly the T-Hex is the one that is important. And this kind of ties straight into the Baron lane discussion, which is what we're going to talk about now. Basically, I personally feel that with the T-Hex, the best pushing formation is actually a 4-1 formation. And I never really explained this in any of my videos, but I feel that the T-Hex is still pretty weak compared to Baron Nashor, the old Baron Nashor, but I feel the best way for T-Hex to be used is if T-Hex together with 3 people push one lane, normally mid, whereas a split pusher pushes another lane. So what this does is the T-Hex does decent tower damage but needs to be protected, because if not, he can just get focused by the enemy team and he can't really protect himself. At the same time, with his tail sweep and with his shielding and movement speed to his teammates, he can help protect his teammates as well. So it's really good if 4 people work together to push with the T-Hex, while the last guy, normally the Baron laner, goes to push another lane. So this of course then ties into split pushers and why split pushers are kind of good again. But now let's go ahead and talk about it. So I think the best Baron laner by far is definitely going to be Jax. Now ever since Jax got his rework, he has been really strong, just that most people haven't really realized it. Only in the recent patches have people start to realize Jax's strengths, and he's now getting very popular, and he is really strong, super duper tanky, does a lot of good damage, and also an incredible split pusher. Now Aatrox, amazing Sundered Sky user, can go for a lot of OP items like Sundered Sky and Divine Sunderer at the same time, and also does a lot of damage, heals an insane amount, and with that movement speed from the ultimate, really easy to run people down. Now Garen is kind of the only real outlier here. He's not a really strong split pusher, he's just a really good tank. I guess you could say that Sion and Ord are also really good tanks, but Sion is also a very good split pusher in that sense. Looking at the S tier, we have a lot of champs here. Of course, Gwen is always going to be good because generally in the top lane tanks are better at the moment, so Gwen is going to be able to shoot through them. Darius, ever since he got that buff from I think like 2 patches ago, has been pretty solid in the Baron lane and has been the menace. Maokai got a couple rounds on nerfs, but is still pretty solid. I don't quite think S plus tier, but I still think it's pretty solid. The split pushers, Fiora and Camille, have definitely risen up my tier list by quite a bit. Because as I said, I think split pushers are really strong. You guys saw from my Ezreal video that Fiora completely destroyed my team just from the split push. And if you can split push well, it is definitely going to work out, which you can do with a lot of Baron laners, to be fair, but these are a little bit more specialized in split pushing. A lot of other strong champions, like Urgot, has fallen a little bit from grace after a period he was really strong. Nowadays, he's not really that popular anymore, and still pretty okay, but I wouldn't say he's like, S plus tier material anymore. And yeah, honestly, most things on the tier list kind of remain the same. Maybe something else I want to touch on is like Nasus getting buffed like 2 patches ago and being able to use like Divine Thunder as well. I really don't think that changes all that much because Nasus still has the same problems of being very hard to farm up to relevant amount of stacks and having like weak early game and just being very easily kited, and you're kind of team reliant. You're not going to be 1v9ing on Nasus most likely, so still kind of the same issues. But with Baron lane discussed, let's talk about the jungle. Okay, so huge changes all around. Like in the Baron lane, we have huge changes in the top tier. So we have the same kind of in the other roles as well. You can really see this in the jungle, where you guys know I always put like Kha'Zix, Lee Sin as the top 2, and then normally followed by Kayn for the longest time. But that has finally changed. So you guys can see here, I think Viego is definitely the best jungler at the moment. He is so strong, really easy to get kills, really easy to take over souls, and really easy to just snowball. He can build so many things. He can build like more bruisery. I've seen tank Viego. Of course, the crit Viego is still really popular. Bruiser Viego also really popular. Just a lot of good builds for Viego, and just a really relatively easy champion to execute in terms of his base kit. But of course, you kind of have to know how to play a lot of champions to play Viego really to his full potential. Even if you don't, you still get the ult reset, and you can still, just play for the resets, things like that. Now, I actually think Hecarim, I've been underrating a little bit. I have him at the top of the S tier previously, but I really do think he's actually S+. I think he's actually really strong. even when you build tank, you do a lot of damage. You have really good backline access, and you are really tanky at the same time with a lot of healing. Just way too good. Now, Xin Zhao, I'm preemptively putting him in the S plus tier because I have seen a lot of strong Xin Zhao games, but I'm not quite sure if he's definitely there. I personally feel that he is, but you know, maybe in the next patch or so, he might drop down my tier list. But for now, I think he has a really, really strong early game. Can 1v1 almost anyone in the early stages of the game. Can of course build Triforce, Divine Thunder, Sundered Sky, all of these good items, and his itemization is really, really good now, so he can transition well into the mid and late game, and really strong in the early game, as I said. Really good ganks and really good just 1v1 potential. Now, Lilia did get a round of nerfs, but you guys notice that Lilia is kind of that kind of champion where she's really strong, and but she has a little bit of a weird playstyle because she kind of have to kite in and out of fights with your W and your Q when it's up. But whenever I see a Lilia player and they play Lilia decently, she pretty much always does well. And I think Lilia's in a really solid spot right now. Now, Lee Sin has been decently popular recently, and we always know a good Lee Sin is always going to be deadly. So Lee Sin, in my opinion, most likely never going to leave the S plus tier. Pretty much since the game Wild Rift started like 3+ years ago, Lee Sin has pretty much always been an S plus tier jungler and pretty much never fallen out of the meta. There have been times where he has been a little bit unpopular, but if you're good at him, you could always play him. So if you want to play someone good in jungle, it's pretty much going to always be Lee Sin. Now, I have dropped like Kayn and Kha'Zix down a little bit. I still think that they are good, but just not quite as good as the S plus tier champion. So Maokai, again, got a couple of rounds of nerfs, but still really strong. Then we have like champions like Aatrox, Jarvan, and Vi, who are basically the new Divine Thunder not Divine Thunder, Sundered Sky users, really good Sundered Sky users, and just changes the game a lot for them, makes them a lot stronger going for Sundered Sky, and yeah, just really became a lot better. Of course, we always know that Aatrox has always been a strong champion, and Vi and Jarvan always have had very good gangs, so this only just makes it better. Now, I've dropped a couple champions down, like Kindred and Gwen, because I don't think Kindred is really that good anymore after she got nerfed, after she was initially OP. Like, she hasn't really been all that strong. I honestly have never actually seen a good Kindred player. I think that no one really just put in the time to play Kindred, at least in terms of the opponents that I have fought. And Gwen, yeah, just falls off a little bit just because in the jungle, the tanks are not really that strong. Of course, you do have tanks in other roles. Gwen could be good, but she kind of has to power farm a lot in the early stages of the game. Now, some other champions who got buff champions like Jax and Darius, they are, I think, just way better in the Baron lane. They are still playable in the jungle, but they are just way better in the Baron lane, personally, is what I feel. But anyways, with that said, let's talk about the mid lane. At the top of the tier list for the mid lane, we have our latest champion, Lissandra. Now, no one is surprised about this. Generally, Riot likes to release their champions in really strong states. And initially, I thought Lissandra was alright, but after people started getting better at her, and then nowadays you can see some decent Lissandras. Not everyone is that good at her yet. But just based on the few players that I've seen that play Lissandra well, you can see that pretty much she does insane amounts of damage, especially considering how safe she is. Like, her basic combo of just going in and W queuing can nearly one-shot someone without even having to ult them, which basically tells me that she has way too much damage at the moment. I think her damage on her W and or Q needs to be toned down a little bit. So at this stage now, I think she's probably the best and really easy to execute mid lane champion at the moment. I still think like Zoe and Akali and Syndra are all still really, really strong mages. It's just that they are really hard to play and you have to be really good at them to be good. Zed did get that buff on that a couple of patches ago, I think maybe 2 patches ago, and I think that buff has helped him out a lot, and I actually think that he's really, really strong. Like, he's also pretty popular after he got that buff, and you see quite a lot more of him. Now, honestly, mid lane has a ton of strong champions. The Wind Brothers are still really strong. Vladimir, Kassadin, all still really, really strong. I have dropped down a couple of champions as well, like Echo, Ahri, and Vex, who I still think are amazing, just that I just don't think they're as good as the champions in the S tier. So a couple of adjusting, like Twisted Fate Annie goes down to A tier as well, especially with the Hex Splash getting nerfed and things like that. But overall, the mid lane tier list probably remains relatively similar compared to the last patch, and especially versus the other roles where I've switched things up a lot. But now let's get into my favorite part to discuss the ADCs. As you guys know, this is my main role, and I did think a lot about the way I made this tier list, because honestly, I think that within the S plus tier, you can see that the best champions are Varus. I've said this in my Varus video that he is the best champion. We have Tristana and Kai'Sa, and up next. And personally, I've been playing a lot of Tristana this season, my most played champion this season. And then we have Xayah, who we just covered 2 days ago, and Ezreal, who we've also covered recently. I think these 5 are the strongest champions. But honestly, I think within S plus tier, there is a tier list as well. So I think the S plus tier can actually be split into 3 parts. And I was considering whether to split these champions, like for example, moving Xayah and Ezreal down to S tier, and then moving S tier champions down to A plus tier, things like that. But aside for simplicity's sake, I just put the top 5 champions in the S plus tier. So, but within the S plus tier, I think Varus is in the league of his own. He is the top ADC right now. And then tier 2 in the S plus tier is going to be Tristana and Kai'Sa, the super strong hyper carries. And then tier 3 is going to be Xayah and Ezreal. Now, the main problem with Xayah and Ezreal is that they're actually really strong champions on par with Tristana and Kai'Sa. But they're a lot more reliant on your team comp and the enemy team comp. So for example, for Xayah, she's really only very good when you have a lot of champions that want to jump in on you. And for Ezreal, he has very glaring weaknesses of like lack of wave clear. So you really need your team to have good wave clear for Ezreal to be a very strong champion, because you need your team to kind of cover up your weakness. So that's kind of the deal with the S plus tier. In the S tier, I think Kalista is really strong, probably the strongest level 1, level 2 champion in terms of ADCs. Tristana, not Tristana, Samira, of course, still amazing champion, really good at snowballing, as is Draven, and even Lucian for that matter, even though going for the IE rush is not really as good as in the last patch anymore. Caitlyn's still really good and up there. I played a decent amount of like Zeri and Jinx. I still think that they're pretty okay. Haven't actually really touched Ashe, but from what I've seen, she is still around there. Now I have actually touched Jhin, and I really don't think Jhin is all that strong anymore, especially after IE got nerfed. Like Jhin is kind of a champion where you have to build IE, and IE doesn't really give you very much value. And I really just don't think Jhin is that good now. Now, Sivir and Vayne also kind of just a little bit behind. Like Sivir, you might as well play a better hyper carry like Jinx if you want to play Sivir, or Zeri for that matter. And with the Vayne, if you want to play a tank shredder, on-hit Varus, on-hit Vayne is going to be better majority of the time, but not as bad as like MF and Twitch, who really are the worst. MF, ever since the rework, hasn't really found her niche, and Twitch is kind of that on-hit kind of hyper carry. But again, in the S plus tier, we have so many better options for that. Like the top 3 pretty much are just way better versions of Twitch at the moment. So kind of sad that the Rat is kind of out of the picture, because he is a really fun champion to play, but maybe someday he'll be back in the meta. Let's finally move on to talking about the supports. So for the supports, I actually think the best support is Maokai support. Now you've seen that in a lot of my videos, I am playing with a Maokai support, and I firmly believe that actually Maokai is pretty much the best support now. Most of his nerfs are targeted on his base stats, and twice targeted on his Q damage. Now, of course, as support, your Q damage is a lot less relevant than jungle and top. So the main thing that's relevant support is your utility and your CC. Now, they haven't nerfed his ult at I think they actually did nerf his ult, a root duration slightly once, and they didn't nerf his W cooldown or root duration or damage or at all whatsoever. So maxing W on Maokai support basically gives you just a point and click CC that makes you untargetable as well and guarantees you engage well. Basically, Maokai is like a safe version of playing like Nautilus, Leona, Thresh, these kind of champions, where instead of having to land a hook, you just need to point and click and launch yourself at the enemy team. And if you have Glacial, pretty much you have CC'd them already, you've done your job, and then you push them back with your Q. So Maokai, definitely the best support at the moment. Now, I still think Karma is incredibly strong, because even when you're not building full damage, your Q chunks people out so much. You have undodgeable CC combos with like your W and your ulti combo, but most people don't really know how to play Karma that well. I rarely actually see Karma players play Karma optimally, but if she's played well, she's pretty much up there. Now, my opinion on Lulu has kind of fluctuated throughout the patches, but I've been playing with and against a decent amount of Lulu. I actually think that she actually feels quite strong, despite the fact that pretty much over the years, she's gotten pretty much only nerfs and not buffs, but somehow she manages to always be kind of good to great. Now, Pyke, I still think is a really good support at finding picks and snowballing the game if you're good at him. Of course, we still have a lot of good enchanters like Soraka and Yumi. Also, we have Lux, who can build enchanter or carry. Really good engagers like Rakan and Leona. And yeah, you guys can see the rest of the tier list for yourself. Not too much has changed. The only thing I'm going to touch on a little bit is Ashe, Zyra, and Lissandra. So Ashe support kind of has fallen off like in the recent number of patches. Like there was a time where Ashe support was really good, but they nerfed her W cooldown by like twice, and they buffed the attack speed on her Q. So pretty much Ashe is just better as an ADC right now. Now Zyra, there was a period where she was strong, but after she got that round of nerfs, both Zyra in support and mid is just not really all that good. And I have seen Lissandra support, which is why I'm putting her on the tier list here. Now, Lissandra support has two ways to be played. Number one is building her tank. And when you build her tank, it's just for utility. Now, I think that build is kind of not too bad, but most people are building her damage. And if you build damage on Lissandra support, you're going to be lacking gold because you're a support, and you're going to be quite far behind the curve unless you just get a bunch of kills, which I have also seen happen before. But generally, just way better options than Lissandra support, in my opinion. But with all that said, that's pretty much the end of the tier list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and found it insightful. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, guys, and goodbye.